Now. Okay, my name is Kathy Gaw, and it's a privilege and an honor to interview Dr. Willie S. Williams today, May 25th, 2015, for the Oral History Project. Dr. Williams, I've had the opportunity to read your impressive curriculum vitae and would like to provide a brief overview as your introduction.
Very good.
Okay. So, after an 18-month tour of duty in England with the U.S. Army, you earned your BA in Chemistry and Mathematics from the University of Wichita in 1958. This was followed by your earning your master's degree in Education Administration and Personnel Services from Xavier University in 1960, and then your PhD in Rehabilitation Counseling and Psychology from Michigan State University in 1970.
Yes.
It is notable to me that you became a psychologist during some pretty vibrant eras, both the civil rights era and the beginning of the community mental health era.
Yes.
Those are major changes in time. Now, you've held a variety of professional positions, including founder of and practitioner within a private practice firm, clinical director of the Cleveland Municipal Court's Forensic Psychiatric Clinic,
Yes.
associate dean and professor at Case Western Reserve School of Medicine,
Correct.
assistant chief for psychological research and training center for minority group mental health programs at the National Institute for Mental Health, psychologist with the Cincinnati Police Department,
Yes.
and junior high school counselor, which is probably the most difficult job of all.
It really was.
I think junior
Most
high is a
interesting,
tough
though.
time. I bet.
Yes.
Bet. Now, you've also served on a number of boards and in leadership positions, including on the Ohio State Psychology Licensing Board,
Yes.
the Board of Education for Shaker Heights, and the Board of the Association of Black Psychologists.
Yes.
You've received a number of awards and honors, including the Congressional Honor from Congressman Louis Stokes and Elder of Elders, a designation from the Association of Black Psychologists.
Correct.
And as I understand, that is their highest
That's
designation?
the highest designation, yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
So as I was getting ready for this interview, I was thinking about all of these things that you have done and also reflecting on what's been happening, what has come to the media attention in this past year. A lot about the racial profiling that police have been doing and how that's contributed to their overzealous and unfair treatment of
Black people at
Black
times.
people,
And,
yes.
people of color generally. And it's one of the things that, I think is prevailing in a system that has the economic base where money and economy becomes the greatest value.
Yes.
And when that happens, you have people who will tend to set or make rules that will keep people in certain places within that system. And it's more an economic matter, I think, than it's a matter of the people who are actually committing some of the acts that they're committing.
Yes, and I saw that you have had through the years so much experience working both on the level of juvenile delinquency as well as with the police departments, and I was thinking how amazing a time this must be to see some recognition of these issues that I'm sure you've been saying for years and decades. Hello, wake up.
That's right. There are ways you could deal with this and not have the kind of problems down the line that we now have.
Yeah.
And there had been attempts, on my part and people that I've worked with to deal with some of these problems. And because of the finances, they wouldn't do it. And now it's at a point where somebody has to make some decisions.
And that is a wonderful thing.
Yes, yes. It makes me feel good.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
now maybe somebody will listen.
Yes. Oh, that's great.
Yes.
So I am curious how you came to psychology from starting in mathematics, and although I know there are plenty of people who are interested in engineering and kind of edge towards psychology, but tell me that story.
Race is the factor. When I was growing up, my parents emphasized doing well and learning to be good in mathematics and to understand music, because that would help you to deal with some of the things that come up as far as tests go, and you'll be able to do better. Because if you're able to deal with the tests in the system, then you can usually move a little bit better.
You had very wise parents.
Oh, yes. My mother went to the 8th grade and my father to the 3rd. But they wanted us to do better. And my father was a minister, and so we had some very strict rules that we had to follow growing up. And we had a set of values that said people are important, and what we do to and for people is what makes a difference. And
Yes.
that was an important part of my early childhood.
Uh-huh.
And then I was born in Prattville, Alabama.
Okay.
And even though the racial problems exist, black and whites live together. We lived in the same community as white people. And there was a white boy next door when I was in elementary school that had a bulldog. And he would get to go to school on they got a ride to school. And we had to walk to school further than theirs. It was a one-room schoolhouse. And he would chase us many mornings with the bulldog, my brother and me.
Oh, my goodness.
And so my parents sent us to Cincinnati to live with my grandparents. And I had done well in school there, and so I had advanced a grade. And when I got to Cincinnati, the school system automatically put me back from the 2nd grade to the 1st grade because I was black and I was from the South. So my early educational experiences, had these kinds of racial overtones,
Absolutely.
to it. And then I did well in school, and I was in the high school honor society.
Excellent.
And I got a football scholarship to Anderson College, and tuition was $186 a year. A semester.
Wow. The good old days.
The good old days. Those are the real good old days, financially speaking.
Yes.
And I was fairly good in math and science, so I majored in chemistry and had a minor in mathematics. But
Okay.
I knew that at that time, I could count on one hand the black chemists in the United States. So I prepared myself with the minor in education as well as, in the sciences.
Boy.
So when I graduated, I had an internship at Boeing Aircraft Company. And I could have worked there as a chemist. But I wanted to come back to Cincinnati. Boeing was in Wichita.
Okay.
And when I came back to Cincinnati, the only job in chemistry that I could get was working for the Pure Food and Drug Administration. They would have paid me $4,400 a year at that time. And if I taught school and coached football, I would have made $4,200 a year. So I said, I'm not going to work
Right.
that extra time for $200.
Yeah.
Plus, I liked, sports, and I wanted to coach. And
Nice.
so I went into education instead of into the sciences.
Okay.
I had applied at what was then Wright's Aircraft Company. It's now GE, General Electric.
Okay.
They had a position open for chemists. And when I applied, they told me the position was filled, but they continued to advertise for months later.
Oh.
And another job that I had applied for that I wanted was with National Lead. And when I applied for that one, the response was the same.
Oh my.
So it was just not, in many instances, possible for blacks to get positions. And so the first chapter that I wrote as a psychologist was on career development for blacks, and I pointed out that it's not a matter of choice as it is
Right.
in theories that are presented. It's a matter of what is open and available in this kind of system that we have.
Yes. Yes. And it sounds like you had very wise parents to kind of prepare you with a varied and solid base so you could go in a couple different directions. And then you adding education in, I think, sounds like a very wise. Was there anybody kind of
Blacks
mentoring
could
you
get
through that?
jobs teaching and working at the post office if you had a degree at that time.
Oh my
Those
goodness.
were the primary
Okay.
places that you get. So
Okay.
most blacks would get the preparation to teach if they didn't get to their profession that they had chosen.
Wow. Wow. That is heartbreaking.
Yes. But times have changed.
I
To some extent.
hope they have.
Yes.
I hope it hasn't just gone under the radar and kind of.
Well, that is a good point. My career, once it got started, kind of went in the position of being a person dealing with system change. And the need for people working in different areas was great. But the people that would be selected to work in those areas became an issue.
Yes.
Tests were developed that were not relevant to the black and other racial group experiences. Except for Orientals, they seem to have had a much better
That's interesting.
grasp of the system even than the whites did. Many of them scored better, but they still got excluded, in many instances from the
Yes.
programs. So the first job that I got was as a psychologist was at the University of Cincinnati. And it was rather interesting because the fact that I had grown up in Cincinnati, I worked in Cincinnati, I wanted to get a PhD in psychology, applied at the University of Cincinnati, and the dean of the School of Education, I wanted the school psych degree at that time, asked me why I wanted a PhD, and so he went on to point out to me blacks in the area who had achieved and didn't have a PhD.
Oh my goodness.
And with my spirited attitude, I said, I want one because you got one.
Good for you.
And needless to say, I didn't get admitted to the University of Cincinnati.
Oh, well.
But anyhow, I got admitted to Michigan State. And
Nice.
one of my colleagues and I developed a program for counseling minority students that was outside of the counseling center there.
Oh.
And there was a lot of problems that came up around that because we weren't participating in the regular system there, right?
Oh boy.
And so anyway, it became an effective program. And there was some national recognition for it. And people want us to come all over the country.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And the president, rather, of Michigan State said that if we went out and looked at all the other programs and bring the best offer back and they would top it, so that we would stay at Michigan State.
Wow.
Which was a phenomenal offer for us, but I ended up going back to the University of Cincinnati.
Isn't that interesting?
They did not admit me at that earlier time. Mm-hmm. We developed a program there, and
nice.
Then at the period where Martin Luther King, or during the period when he was assassinated, the Republican Party, which is the more conservative one, made an agreement with the Black Psychiatrists of America that they would set up a program in the National Institute of Mental Health to provide funding for more research and training for people of racial minorities. So we were able to participate in the development of that program.
Excellent.
And so then other places wanted programs that would enhance the ability to get more racial minorities into the professions. And so that's kind of the way my career has gone, you know, once I left the area of math and science.
And so how long were you at the NIMH in that position?
I was there for 4 years.
Okay. And
then,
how did you feel about that program that they were organizing?
The program was great. It's interesting. I don't remember how many $1 billion the National Institute of Mental Health received, but the program that was funded for the minority groups, African Americans, Native Americans, Hispanics, and Asians, they gave us $3 million to service all of these groups.
Oh my. Not even $1 million per group.
Not even $1 million per group.
Jeez.
But anyway, we developed a program that would teach minorities how to develop programs and develop research that allowed them to tap into the big pot. So we weren't going to try to, we couldn't have trained anybody for that small amount of money. So developing programs that trained them how to get into the pots was what we did, and it was effective, and the conservatives who had gone along with setting it up in the beginning said, no, this program isn't working.
It's too effective.
It's too effective. And so they discontinued it.
Oh my goodness. So it was only around for 4 years.
Well, I left there before it was over.
Okay.
I left there after 4 years. I think it lasted another 3 or 4 years. And
that is shocking.
Yes, but it's just the way things have gone. And I guess I was saying that to say that there have been things accomplished in small ways that have enabled us to make change. And I think that's really what needs to happen now as far as the police and work with juveniles is concerned. And one of the things that I didn't mention earlier was that while I was working on my PhD in rehabilitation counseling, my focus was on juvenile delinquency, rehabilitation of juveniles. And so that's how I got into the juvenile part of it.
Okay.
Then I had a major professor whose interest is attitude change. And so I was interested in racial attitude change.
Yeah.
And I went back to Cincinnati and talked with the police chief there. And since I was from Cincinnati, he was open to me conducting research to deal with the racial attitudes of the Cincinnati Police Department. So that's what my doctoral research was on.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And what did your research find?
Well, the important findings was that where people have the opportunity to do something different, they will have more positive attitudes. If they're not put in a position where they must follow a pattern that goes against some of the strong attitudes that they have, then the attitudes are not to change. There's a resistance that develops. But if there is the opportunity to do something different, or even if you can approach it differently, it helps to deal with the attitude. Another important finding was reward. If there's a reward the right thing, people had a tendency to do. So I developed some training programs, and even one that I did at the VA some years ago.
Nice.
That use that particular dynamic to
That's
attitudes.
and did the police department use some of your findings, do you think, or
it's I don't know if all research ends up that way or not, especially
it's hard to...
doctoral. I made a big mistake. I didn't publish any of my findings at that time. And my major advisor tried to get me to do that. But I had a family, a wife, and 3 kids. And so
you had a few other things to do.
So I need to make some money. I mean, I've been going through getting the education. So I didn't do some of the things that would have been helpful.
I see.
If I had published, I think they probably would have dealt with some things differently. But after I completed the dissertation, I went back to Cincinnati. I became the psychologist, consulting psychologist for the police department.
For the police department, that's great.
But I didn't really deal with the racial attitudes.
Even, maybe not directly, but do you feel like that was kind of
a part of what my job was to, yes, I did deal with racial attitudes. In a different sort of way, now that I think about it. Okay. Actually,
they didn't hire you to do that.
They didn't hire me to do that, right. They hired me to determine whether or not these people were satisfactory from a set of different criteria that I had established to function as police officers. Okay. So it was the police psychological evaluations. Okay. And Cincinnati was ahead of the game in doing that at that time, to the extent that they did. A number of cities were doing it, but Cincinnati was one of those.
Wonderful. Okay.
And I did look at racial attitudes as a part of what I established. Yeah,
yeah. Okay, okay. So that, wow. So how did you, just even from that up to that part in your life, how did you continue to be positive and move forward without just getting really, really stuck in anger? And I mean, it makes me angry just to hear, the story.
Well, there's a kind of resilience, I think, and oppress people who want to do something to change the situation. So you make use of that energy that you have to move forward. There's a psychiatrist, France Fanon, I was trying to remember where he's from, Lower Antilles. He died at Walter Reed Hospital, who wrote a book called Black Skins, White Masks. And he talks about the fact that blacks live in the system where the predominant culture operates one way, and it tells everybody to operate that way, but it doesn't allow them to operate that way. And so what you have to do is wear this mask that says, okay, I'm operating that way, but you've got to deal with issues in a way that they're functional and effective for you and what you want to accomplish. And you have to move along, you know, a continuum where you have a goal at the end that you want to accomplish, and you make use of whatever resources that you can to accomplish that goal. And so your energies are directed toward accomplishing that goal. If you allow your energies to be eaten up by the anger, then you never change yourself. You never improve yourself or change the system.
The system, yeah, yeah. Well, you have an incredible fire, and I'm glad that you kept that directed. I mean, I'm sure you shared it also with the young people that you worked with, and I think that's such an important message for young people to hear when they're feeling oppressed for whatever reason. That
yes,
you know, keep going.
You've got there's a lot of energy. The anger gives you tremendous energy. But if you don't use that anger properly, you turn it in on yourself. And that's what we're dealing with right now. And I've got a pastor who understands this at Olivet Church where I attend. And he's working, and I'll be working with him hopefully, in helping the movement to go from not destroying yourself and your property, but using that energy to bring about change in the system to make the system more effective.
Yes.
And so this is what I've always done and wanted to do, so it just fits something that'll make me at 83 go back to work again.
Oh, that is so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, just even with this most recent judgment that came down, and how short-sighted the
judge was.
But how I just feel so incredibly proud of how the community has rallied and managed this, and I hope that we can not feel squelched, but be able to use this for change and ride it out.
Yes. One of the things that my pastor said yesterday to the message was, you don't react, because if you react, the anger and the emotions are the things that are dominant. You respond. If you respond, you take the time to figure out what is the problem, and you move from there. And it was a very important thing. And on Tuesday of this week, we will be involved in a march that will be a peaceful, nonviolent march that will hopefully enable us to talk about issues that are of importance and what the method for change is and how we go about bringing change about.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. Because we've it just takes me to another place in some of the things that
what to talk about it in my career, because it's very difficult when we don't have the vision to make plans to do what it is that you feel is important to bring about the change.
Yes.
You can't expect someone else to do it. You have to say, okay, these are the things that need to be done. Let me talk with other people and see what their thoughts are, and let's put a program together. Once we put a program together, let's move together toward that program. And if there are people who want to come in to help, then we let them help. If they want to take us in a different direction, we let them go on and do those other things that they feel important, but we just continue to move toward what it is that we feel is important to accomplish in achieving this goal. And so that has been very helpful.
Yes, yes. And you said that takes you to other points in your career?
Yes, the program that we started at Michigan State, when we received the criticism for doing what we did,
A separate program.
program, then there were some others who came in to help. And one of them happened to be a professor who had made me think I was out of the PhD program at Michigan State. And it was a very difficult situation in time. My writing skills were not what he thought they should be. And there's some other things that he thought about me for whatever his reasons were. And in this particular course, that was the doctoral professional seminar, you had to get an A or a B. You were allowed 2 C's, I think, in graduate school.
Okay.
Not, this one had to be an A or B, or you didn't continue in the program.
Okay.
And there were 3 phases to it. One was teaching.
Okay.
I'd been a teacher for 13 years, so the professor whose class that I worked with, he died, so I finished teaching
my
the class
goodness.
for him.
Okay, so you passed that.
Should have been A.
Yes.
Math was a good background. Research was another part.
Okay.
So I got an A in that because the professor told me I did. So if I got 2 A's, even if I get a D from this guy, I should have at least a B in the course. It's matter of logic. But he gave me a C in the course. And
Wow.
it was something that changed my entire life. And
Yeah.
that's when the views of Malcolm X and some of the others who had said nothing from nothing leaves nothing made me feel that, hey, this was the end of the line. And I was ready to be physically aggressive with this professor. And the other black student in the program ran down the hall and grabbed another professor and brought him down there. And so they quieted me down. But my life was never the same after that. And I guess it was a point where anger came to the boiling point, so to speak. And I then grew a beard, started wearing dashikis.
All right.
Movement. That's when we took over the thing and developed the Black Center.
So
And
you
so
embraced those differences that he was maybe consciously or unconsciously using.
But the thing that happened, this professor, once we went the way we were going, came back and wanted to participate with us in this program. And I welcomed him. And the other students were outrageous. Look, you have a philosophy that you've developed. Whoever can help you, use them helping you move forward. And we became the best of friends.
Wow.
And it was a whole, different kind of thing. I guess that was what came to mind when you said that.
Yes, that's fabulous. And yeah, I
So
mean,
then it took me to a point in my career where I just said, okay, whatever I deem important, that's what I'll do, regardless of what anybody says. And it has been effective for me over the years.
that is fantastic. Yes, yes. And I can't imagine what a complete and total change this other professor must have gone through just in terms of his awareness and...
Yeah. But we talked. I would recommend students for the program. He would minimum my recommendation. I mean, it was just a whole new world once we saw the world through the same set of lens. And I think that's one of the other big issues that we deal with. You know, in working with police, the vast majority of policemen that I've worked with, their attitudes are pretty much the same as mine. They want to live the good life and do their job and whatever. But there are times when the system because of the economic base has established a different way of accomplishing certain kinds of things. The problems that existed during the early part of my career, where asylums and mental hospitals were the things that, or the facilities that were available to deal with people with problems, and mental illness was looked at differently, permitted the system often to do what it wanted to do, because if there were people, I know for blacks specifically, who were agitators and did things in the community that they shouldn't have been, and then they got declared mentally incompetent, mentally ill, psychosurgery, lobotomies, other kinds of things could be done legally within the system.
Yeah.
And so it's a part of, you know, what inspired many of us to be concerned about the change, the necessity of the change taking place. But it was because the behaviors met the need of the system.
Yes. Okay.
And so there is an important component of what I see in mental health as system change. And that was a part of what I worked with when we were developing the system for placement of youth at Cuyahoga Hills Boys School.
Yes.
Delinquency more was looked at in somewhat of a disease entity kind of view.
Okay.
And
And an untreatable disease, or?
well, you treat this disease, you treat this problem, this disease, and you classify these youth because they've got these mental problems or issues.
Okay.
And often, all you're dealing with is behaviors that have developed somewhere along the line as a result of the socialization process. But if you got caught up in this group that went over here, that could be classified in some way as mentally ill, you could deal with them differently.
Yeah.
And you didn't give them the same kinds of things. Their personalities didn't develop the same way. There were opportunities for youth to get diversionary programs, but they had to ask for these programs, and they had to qualify based on test results.
Oh my goodness.
And so you're not going to get these youth over here qualifying or whatever. So you had the blacks continually going off into the system that deprived them more of their rights. So all you've got is this internal anger that's built up, where I was able to get mind release and get some positive reinforcements.
Yes.
most were not able to do that.
No.
So we had to come up with a program. We were trying to come up with a program that would allow us to classify boys based on the behaviors and try to deal with behavioral change. And in psychology at that time, the move was going away from the so-called insight therapies to behavioral therapy.
Yes.
Stamp out all non-behavioral objectives used to be one of the things they taught us in our program there. But this is what, is needed. Take a look at the behaviors. What's causing these behaviors? What are the system factors out there that are involved in the behaviors? And when we began to deal with system factors, just like at NIMH, when we saw that we weren't going to be able to deal with this small bit of money, to deal with it, we'd start to work on changing the system. But the system operators, the ones who want the system to go as it is, did not allow these changes to occur. They withdrew the money from it. And so this is one of the problems that we face. And it's one of the things that we're facing now. And if we don't deal with them more effectively here with the police and the youth, I think the problem is just going to become more pronounced.
And was your classification system received well and implemented, or?
Well, one of my problems is when I get so far and I don't get results that I think we need to have by a certain period, I'm off to something else.
Okay.
So I left Cuyahoga Hills just as they had put it. It was some 20, 30 years ago. I'm not sure where we were with the program.
Okay.
But I don't think it did. They never paid me for it because
Oh my goodness.
the state
All kinds
said the
of.
money, it didn't go about being structured properly.
Of course not.
And so I don't think they wanted the program.
Yeah.
And anyhow, I never got paid for it.
Okay.
And I, did something else. I had to pay a staff out of my other earnings that helped to put the stuff together. And so I don't know really whether it was implemented or what happened to it. I just kept it because I loved it.
Yes.
Nobody else did. I still loved it.
Well, that's and I think it's a good thing to bring out again in certain ways. I think
that's why I brought it out here when you said that. I said, let me take out some of these things that were thwarted earlier in my career. Maybe somebody will look at something else, and maybe some of this can be looked at in a different way.
Absolutely, and I appreciate your being willing to talk about this, because I think that a lot of people, you are very highly respected, and a lot of people see the successes, but it's helpful to learn from the things that kind of got thwarted and maybe didn't work out the way you had hoped or whatever, so that that can be picked up and carried on, because I think those are very important endeavors.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah. I know that you've been extremely active with AB Psi.
Yes.
And that evolved, I'm not sure, but out of APA?
Yes,
not
right.
addressing
Yes.
certain needs? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I talked about that at the Cleveland Psychiatric Association, one of their meetings, when I gave a presentation on diversity.
Okay.
And I say that diversity isn't a racial problem, it's an economic problem.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
With slavery, donors were able to realize not 5% or 10%, but 1,500 to 2,000% back on your investment. You bring it, these human beings at whatever you paid for them, and you made literally thousands and hundreds of thousands off of each of these individuals that you brought, and then end up blaming them for the problems that they have at this time when all of the resources that was provided was given to you. You got the benefit of it.
They had no resources.
Yeah, no resources. We're not compensated in any way. And of course, when I made my presentation, there were some psychologists even who didn't appreciate the way I presented it, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
The thing that happened with APA, some of the black psychologists were telling them, hey, there is not enough, there are not enough people in the resource pool to deal with the issues that we're having as far as blacks are concerned, because you're not looking at it from the black perspective. And so there were some things that they said needed to be done. But APA did not choose to look at those things. So the feeling was that, hey, we need to first, they were trying to do it internally, say make some changes and get involved here. And then I think on the issue of testing, where you know, some of the black psychologists demonstrated that if we develop a test that's based on black culture, you won't do very well on it. And they didn't.
What a surprise.
What a surprise. And there was not enough traction in APA to deal with the testing industry, which is at that time was a multi-million, maybe billion-dollar industry, I don't know which. And there wasn't going to be sufficient changes made. So some blacks felt that, you know, you can't make changes, you know, in
internal,
and that ABSI should be completely outside of APA. There were some who felt that you can't make changes outside from within. So if you're not inside, you know, so it's one of the dilemmas. You know? So there were those who stayed in APA. And APA did some work with ABSI and with the students of ABSI. And the program that I was telling you about that I became a part of, that the Nixon administration funded, we were able to develop some traction inside NIMH with some of the other study centers, so that they put up a large block of money to provide training for the racial minority groups. So the whatever the scholars are called, minority scholars in APA, was something that ABSI developed.
Wonderful.
During the early years, and it was a part of a piece that was developed to deal with increasing the number of psychologists, and there was also a research component. We didn't get internally a system structured to deal with the research piece, but we did get the scholars of the student piece. So that has continued to be funded, even though you know, the Minority Center went out of existence. And so it's programs that were structured through our efforts that has enabled us to do some of the things that are done. And I think there needs to be a move back toward training a cadre of black scholars, youth, to be researchers and educators so that we can get a larger pool. I think I was about to say earlier that when I went to get my PhD, I think there were 60-something black in the United States with PhDs in psychology.
Okay.
The number, the last I heard a few years ago, was in the neighborhood of 8,000. But the efforts that, we put forth brought about some change. And because of the change that has been made is one of the reasons that I couldn't keep a job. I was moving from one thing to another because when it would get to the point where I couldn't move anymore, I moved. And that's how I ended up in Cleveland. The black physician population was dying.
Okay.
And I went to the medical school to help work on that. And we were able to make a significant difference.
That is fabulous. That is, well, and again, this is so timely because, the National Register magazine that just came out, update that came out 3 weeks ago or something, has the whole publication dedicated to why aren't there enough young black men coming into the profession and what can we do to change that?
The people started to defund the programs. That's what happened.
Yeah.
That's what happened. When a program begins to be effective and do the things that are needed, the conservative operations move to thwart those programs because it's not what they feel for whatever reasons or
there's a threat. That's I attended Wright State School of Professional Psychology, and
go right ahead.
Was that your professor? No, hopefully
one
not.
of my students was a professor. Two of my students were professors there.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, Dr. Duke Ellis. He died.
Yes, I didn't get a chance to meet him.
And what's Williams? Williams. I can't remember his first name now. A black professor there by the name of Williams.
Thinking Jim Dobbins, but that's not.
Oh, Jim Dobbins. Okay, he wasn't one of my students, but I know Jim Dobbins. And
yeah,
he was one of the people.
He was on my dissertation committee.
Okay, all right. Yes.
Yeah, and the appeal of that program to me was that it was dedicated to developing, a diverse
population, women, men.
Yes,
yeah.
And so of ages, of races, of backgrounds, socioeconomic status, and I thought this is about the only place I feel like I can really attend. So
yes, that was a good program. It's one of those in Ohio.
And I wonder now because, again, they're having funding problems as everybody else is, and they're kind of going through some changes, and they may, they're talking about should they be part of the medical school, and I wonder how that may affect that whole mission.
When those programs begin to be incorporated into another program, it's the death knell usually of that program.
I'm afraid of.
And so those who are interested have to, be aware and begin to take a look at some of the things that are going on and how can you counter those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's... Yeah, I Ron Fox was the dean when I was there, and so he knew Dr. Ellis and
right.
really spoke very warmly about him, and just, I think
Yes.
really had a commitment to kind of carrying out his dream as well.
Yes. Dr. Ellis and I were undergraduate students together at Anderson College, and then I was on the faculty at the University of Cincinnati when he came into the PhD program. And so,
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I wish I had met him. I know they've named their center after him.
after him, right. He was a very, very sharp person.
That's fantastic. And was he involved with the legislator that helped get the program going?
Yes, out of Dayton.
I don't remember his name.
I can't remember his name. I know
That's-
him. I know him. My wife probably knows him also.
Yeah. Well, and I wondered if he had if that community had connections with Stokes and the community up here that was working to do similar things.
Unfortunately, we didn't have those kinds of connections, and we should have.
Okay.
We should have. I think that would have helped programs to survive.
Mm-hmm. That's
Each
interesting.
program was independent, and there was so much energy being placed in doing what your mission was that you didn't think about the real survival thing and how do you deal with getting the kind of connection, making the kinds of connections needed for your program to survive over time.
Interesting. And so that being said, kind of going back to the ABSci, and now, ABSci has been a separate entity from APA, and sounds like they've been able to cooperatively do some things together.
Yes, cooperatively, ABSci and APA have done some things because ABSci can now do the things that it feel necessary
Nice.
to be done. Cinepaea, one of the units in APA, has the ABSci, the Asian group, the
Native American
yes,
and Latino.
Latino, right. Those groups are part of APA, and some of them also have an independent
Okay.
operation also.
And they are still trying to get chairs on council, seats on council. Separate
Is that?
seats.
Oh, I thought they were getting the seats. I thought several years ago.
They
I
were
don't know.
trying. They were trying, but I don't think it's passed yet. It seems like 2 or 3 times it's come up for vote. Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. And one of the things that I also presented at the diversity workshop was the notion that the theories and concepts developed at places like MIT, Caltech, some of the other technical institutions that were the major contributions to us being where we are today are and were important.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's an institute in India where the technology surpasses the so-called Western technology. And if, as psychologists, we don't begin to learn how to live with people from other groups, it's just a matter of time until the problems that the blacks and others face will be faced by this nation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to begin to look at diversity in terms of what it really is. And it's an economic situation
Yes.
where whatever is needed economically to keep a position it's expediently done, and the cost to people and to lives are not taken into consideration. So if we can't begin to take a look at how do we live together and deal with different people,
Right.
we're going to be in a position where the problems will be much more than what we can deal with.
Well, I think we're already seeing that in the Middle
I didn't want to
East.
say that.
Okay, I'll keep my mouth shut. Yeah, it's happening. I mean, yeah,
We've got to learn to live as people and live together as people.
yeah, yeah.
You can't always go in and take resources from people and not give anything in return.
Right, right. And then be surprised that they're furious.
That they're furious, right?
How dare they?
But anyhow, that's how my career developed.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So tell me about the Elder of Elders.
When there's a problem in the organization that can't be resolved within the structure that's there, it goes before what's called the Council of Elders. And the Council of Elders then discuss with the ones who have the problems what issues are. And then the Council of Elders makes the final decision.
Oh, that's wonderful. And how is the Council of Elders formed?
It was formed initially as one of the divisions or units of the organization.
Okay.
You have the board of directors. You have the council of elders, and those are the two major
Okay.
units. And the board of directors are responsible for all the legal matters
Okay.
of the organizations. They're elected and have responsibility. The council of elders is there to assist and advise the board of directors and the president. And if there's an ultimate decision, the council of elders try to stay out of it, but if necessary, they will work and then meet with whatever.
And what do you think about that? I mean, to me, it sounds like a fabulous system.
One of the lawyers said he don't know why you have any other kind of organizations. You know, that it's a real significant
That's
part of the organization.
yeah.
Yes.
That's wonderful. And yeah, I mean, again, you get back to that what you've been saying throughout, that economic message. You don't want the business running of the organization to dictate the human running.
That's right. Yes.
I mean, you have to consider it. That you can't be blind to it, but
Right. And one of the basic tenets of black psychology is that it's a trilogy, that it's the mind, body, spirit, as opposed to the Descartes mind, body psychology.
okay.
And if you have the spiritual piece, you don't have a community that would sanction, that would allow an unarmed person to be shot by a police officer who cannot establish that there was a basis for having shot him. So if you've got the value piece in there, it's a most important part of where you are. And we feel that it is a part of our existence.
Absolutely.
And so it's a part of our psychology.
Absolutely. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this interview. Is there anything that I haven't asked about that you feel is important or you would like to share?
No. There are a lot of other things that I
bet.
love.
I bet.
My view that we all have a psychological space. And when that space is encroached upon, we respond. And we can either expel somebody from that psychological space, or we can withdraw ourselves into that psychological space. Or we could just be absent of anything. Just leave all things as they are, not respond in any way. That over time we learn a particular pattern, and we might, for whatever an encroachment is, use more than one approach. And the issue of relationships are based upon that. And that if we have a full understanding of the other person's psychological space, and we deal with it, and we can understand how that person operates based on the way that he deals with his or her psychological space, we can be more effective in bringing about individual and system change. So we're about to end of it.
That's fantastic.
So, anyway.
Thank you so much for taking the time and spending holiday time, no less, to share your life with me, with us. I think it's fabulous. I think you've done really important things, and I really appreciate your sharing them.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here.
I wouldn't have missed it.
Thank you.